Hello, you beautiful stars. Welcome to another week of Awaken and Align podcast. I'm your host, Laura Chung, and this is another solo episode with yours truly. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few things. I'm making more of an effort to ask for help, ask for things that I need. So, with that in mind, if you like this podcast and if you feel in alignment with the messages and the guests that come on, please follow. I don't know how it's done on the other apps, Stitcher and Spotify, but follow, like, share this podcast with others. And also, if you go onto YouTube, you can search for Laura Chung. I will also link the YouTube video in the show notes. You can watch some of the episodes in video format and you can subscribe there. And also follow on Instagram at Awaken and Align or my personal page at I am Laura Chung. It just helps boost for the algorithm so more people can enjoy this free content, because I really believe that I'm following my dharma, I'm following my purpose by just sharing and interviewing people and just really just sharing knowledge and wisdom from our own personal experiences and things that we've learned over the course of our lives, just to make people's lives better. So thank you for listening to that bit. Now, I wanted to do this solo episode specifically for this week because we have a full moon in Aquarius happening on July 23rd and a second full moon in Aquarius happening on August 22nd. And it's a blue moon because it's very rare to have two full moons in the same sign within a month. And if you listen to Stephanie Powell's July 2021 astrology forecast on, I forget what episode, but I will link that episode in the show notes. You would have written down that July 23rd is a significant full moon, as well as the one in August 22nd. And I just wanted to come on here because I'm a little biased. My moon is in Aquarius, and this is something that I've been cultivating within the last, I would say, 2 years, when I got my birth chart read for the first time by an astrologer. And many astrologers over the course of the last 2 years have, mentioned to me about my moon in Aquarius and how it's so different than the energy of my sun in Aries and my rising sign of Sagittarius, that I really started to learn about Aquarian energy. My Venus is also in Aquarius, and I love it. First of all, I love that my moon is in Aquarius, and the more and more I learn about Aquarian energy and about my moon in Aquarius, it just makes so much sense. I feel so validated, and how I move through this world is just very different, which is Aquarian energy, like I said. So this moon is happening on July 23rd or 24th, wherever you are in the world, at 1 degree of Aquarius at 26 minutes. And it's happening at 10:37 p.m. Eastern time. So adjust for your time zone. And the second full moon in Aquarius is happening on August 22nd at 29 degrees of Aquarius and 37 minutes at 8:02 a.m. Eastern time. So there's like about a month between the two. And what I find so significant about this full moon cycle is that we're starting at the beginning of the sign at 1 degree and ending at an energetic degree at 29 degrees in about a month's time. So we're really going to experience the full moon throughout the degrees of Aquarius. And if you think back to December 21st of 2020, we had a Saturn and Jupiter conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius. It was a big deal. It was a huge energetic shift. And a lot of us, even if you weren't into astrology or if you didn't understand it at the time, it was a big deal because those two planets don't really come together at the 0 degree in a new sign. So whatever you were going through at the time, whatever seeds you were planting in the Aquarian house in that particular area of your life, you're starting to see the seeds of that coming up now, 7 months later, with the full moon in Aquarius at 1 degree. You could also think back to around February when we had the new moon in Aquarius. I don't remember exactly when that was, but we had a new moon in Aquarius. And it was also a time for planting seeds and new beginnings. So around this time, you should start seeing a culmination and illumination of energies around your Aquarian house topics, the area of your life that you really thought about at the start of the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction at the end of 2020. Why I also find this to be so significant is that, okay, so we don't really know historically, we don't have exact times, right? But a lot of astrologers that I've been listening to have said that 26,000 years ago, when Saturn and Jupiter came together at that point in Pisces, was the beginning of the Piscean age. When Jesus was born, it was the start of this Piscean age of following a guru, following a teacher, Christ consciousness in a human form, being the leader. That's when we also had Buddha and certain very, very prominent teachers in our collective consciousness. Now, I've heard a lot of Vedic astrologers talk about also the Piscean age being a very hard time collectively for humanity, for humans, because it was a lot of clearing away old karma. It was a very difficult time. I mean, we lived through part of it, so it was a very difficult time throughout our history of a lot of wars, a lot of taking Mother Earth's resources, and it was a lot of authoritarian regimes around the world. Now, we happen to be alive during a very significant age change, energy change, right? We were just in the Piscean age, and now we're in the Aquarian age at this Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius at the end of 2020, which 2020 was such a pivotal, significant year for us individually and us as a collective. And we're now, energy shifts take not just like one day, it takes years, if not, many, many years, many, many ages of years. But the Aquarian energy is all about future forward thinking. It's about technology. It's about energy, astrology, thinking outside the box, being unique, intergalactic, the stars, learning about our universe and our star system. It's also about being humanitarian. It's about the collective. And a lot of people, I've heard a lot of spiritual teachers say Christ consciousness is coming back onto earth during this age, but I really believe it's not in a form of a person per se. It's within us. That energy is activated within each of us, the collective. So the collective, each of us has the power to shift how we've been living for many, 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 many centuries, thousands of years, maybe even since the beginning of time. And that is why it's so important for all of us to do our individual work, our individual inner work, our shadow work, our healing work, our spiritual work, so that collectively, because we are all one, and I know a lot of people say this, but it really is, we have a collective mind and we have a collective consciousness, but we can only change that collective consciousness at the individual level, because our vibration literally changes the frequency of this planet and of everybody around us, our ancestral lineages, the 7 before us and the 7 after us. And I believe personally that we are multidimensional beings and we move beyond space and time. So when we can heal in this moment in time, there's no such thing as our 3D human experiences things in a linear timeline, past, present, and future. But because we are also multidimensional, we are 5-dimensional, we have a spirit, we have access to the spirit realms, that when you heal in the present moment, you also heal your past and your future. So this energy, Aquarian energy, really to me is all about the desire for freedom, the desire to break free, liberation. And this could happen and be prevalent in any area of your life beyond what house it's in, right? We all have, so I use tropical whole house systems. This could be in other areas of your life besides the Aquarian house. This is happening personally in my third house of the mind, of the community, but I really feel this on a bigger level throughout many different areas of my life. So just think about what you've been experiencing the last year, the last 2 years, or even maybe your whole life, an area of your life where you want to feel free, where you want to feel liberated. And I feel this full moon, this first full moon, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little rough to me when I look at it and I look at the angles and the planets that are involved. It seems a little rough, but I really believe that through obstacles and through tense energies, that is a push for us. You know, that's the kick in the ass that we need to finally break free of our own limitations of what we think is possible. And then the second full moon in Aquarius seems a little bit sweeter, a little bit nicer. So this first one is almost like that real facing of our, you know, Saturnian limitations, our, you know, preconceived notions about what we are supposed to be doing, of the boundaries and the limitations that we put onto ourselves, but also at a societal level. I'm not gonna lie, like, we all don't live free in this current time, this current age, right? Because when some of us aren't free, we're not all free, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And there's still many, many marginalized groups that are not free. And so as a collective, again, like I mentioned, we are one mind, we are one collective consciousness. So if a part of us aren't free, then we are all not free. This is why I have a hard time sometimes with, or not sometimes, but a lot of the time with the new age community that only talks about love and light and liberation, but in a way that's very bypassy of people's real lived experiences, you know? And I think it's easy for some people to talk about liberation and freedom and not wearing masks and not being vaccinated and drinking green juice and being out in nature. And trust me, like, I'm one of those people too, because I hold certain levels of privilege. It's easy when you live in nature, when you live in Hawaii under a waterfall, or you have access to fruits and vegetables that are of this land. But there are so many people out here who live in food deserts and who don't have access to nature. I mean, I live in New York. I grew up just outside New York City, but I went to college in the Bronx, which actually, if you know New York at all, there's a section of the Bronx called Riverdale, which is where I went to college, that is very affluent. But like less than a mile away, I would say not even a mile away, was the projects, you know, places where there were housing projects, places where people would have to go to bodegas to get their food with no fresh vegetables. So there is such a large disparity among people who have privilege and people who don't have privilege. So maybe it's because of what I've seen throughout my lifetime, my travels around the world to developing countries. Maybe it's because I'm a daughter of immigrant parents. Maybe it's because I just exposed myself to the way different people live. I just know the ways in which I'm privileged and the ways that we could do better as a society. So I'm just going on that tangent because Aquarius is the energy of being humanitarian. It is the collective. It is the good of all involved. It's for the good of all involved. Aquarius is ruled by the star card in tarot, and I'm showing the Mystic Mondays tarot. So if you're watching on the YouTube version, I'm showing it on the screen. In the traditional Rider-Waite tarot, it's of the water bearer, and the water bearer in ancient Mesopotamia or ancient civilizations, the energy or the feeling of it was that the water bearer pours water to the earth. And it's very significant because water is consciousness. It gives life. It's creative. We were born out of the womb of our mothers, which was a watery environment. 75+% of this world is with water. And scientists know that there are life forms on certain planets based on if there's water there. And so water is very life-giving, and the water bearer pours the water onto the earth for everybody involved. So that is why Aquarius is ruled by the water bearer, the star card, and the star card is such a beautiful, inspiring, healing energy. When I see this card, anytime I pull cards for myself, it really is, you can only see stars when it's dark outside. I forget that quote, but when it is super dark, even when there's no moon, when there's a new moon, when there's a dark moon, there are still stars. And the stars always give me inspiration, of hope, of just this healing energy. And I've spoken about this many times on this podcast, that I've been going on late night moon walks, well, walks now, where I'll just literally go on walks in the dark and just look at the stars, look at the planets, really connect to the energy of the planets. And back in the day, our ancestors, that's how they knew certain seasons. That's how they knew when to plant and grow their crops. That's how they navigated through the seas. So I find it very interesting that some people don't believe in astrology, because it's like, bruh, your ancestors like navigated by the stars and by probably Saturn and Jupiter, which is also how the three magi, the three magicians, found Jesus, because of the Saturn and Jupiter created this huge star of Bethlehem, and they were able to find Jesus in the manger. And the three magi were the three magicians. And in tarot, the magician card is the astrologer, somebody who understands energy and somebody who understands how the stars work and how we use that energy to manifest things, to navigate our way through life. Don't know if you know this, but a lot of the mystery schools, even Christianity before it became, I don't know the right word for it, colonized or controlled, they knew how to use astrology, and they used these hermetic principles of as above, so below, as within, so without. So all of these mystery schools, especially the one, the Christian one before it was controlled by certain entities, used astrology, and then it became like evil, quote unquote, or not Christian enough, quote unquote, because they didn't want the people to have the power. They didn't want people to know how to use their own energy. They didn't want people to think like, oh, they know how to, listen to their intuition now. And, it's all about control, right? So I say that too because Aquarius is in the classical astrology ruled by Saturn, which also rules the sign of Capricorn. And these energies are so interesting and so different. So Capricorn is, the sea goat. It's all about working really hard, climbing the mountain. It's all about structure and building. And Aquarius is this archetype of forward future thinking, of breaking out of the mold, of breaking free. And it's interesting that Saturn ruled both signs, because a long time ago, before the telescope was invented, people literally thought that the universe ended with Saturn. And that's why Saturn is the energy of boundaries, of limits, of contraction, because they literally thought the universe ended at Saturn, until 1781 when somebody looked in a telescope and they were like, holy fuck, there's another planet out there. It's Uranus. I don't know how you pronounce that, but they saw Uranus, and then years later they found Neptune and Pluto, and then they found, Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's an asteroid between Saturn and Uranus. And they were like, okay, hold up. There's more to this universe than meets the eye. And the thing is that these planets were always there, but humans weren't aware of it because they didn't see it with their, physical eyes without a telescope. And that's why Uranus is the planet of awakening, of astrology, because all of a sudden now there's other planets, there's other archetypes, there's other energies. Meanwhile, our ancient ancestors, AKA the Mayans and the Incans and other civilizations around the world, the Egyptians, knew that there were other planetary planets and asteroids and stars and moons out there, in my humble opinion, because they worked with galactic beings. But also I really believe that they felt the energies and the archetypes within themselves, because they were just more attuned to the universe and more attuned to their emotional and astral and energetic bodies. So that is why now in modern astrology, Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius, because it's like, oh my gosh, one day you think that it ends with Saturn, and then the next day, all of a sudden, now we have Uranus out there, which is why Uranus is also the planet of awakening, of, oh my God, lightning and breaking free. It's also about technology and also about astrology and the stars. So, I think that, there's a mosquito in here. Oh, mosquitoes. So I really feel that this energy, again, this full moon, is all about breaking free in some aspect of your life, wherever that might be. Just look in your natal chart. I use the whole house system, as I mentioned, because it gives a more accurate timing and more accurate depiction of like where the certain transits are happening in your house. And I find the degrees to be very, very significant in numerology. And being 1 degree in Aquarius is all about a new beginning. It's all about starting something fresh. And again, when you look back at December 21st, 2020, the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius, that was also the winter solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, the summer solstice in the Southern Hemisphere. And solstices, again, were very, very important to our ancient ancestors. It was like a beginning of a new something, like a new breakthrough. And Saturn and Jupiter conjunction is a 20-year cycle. So you're going to be working on something for 20 years, or it's a new beginning of something for 20 years. I remember, maybe I don't really remember because I wasn't attuned to astrology back then, but I remember, back when Saturn and Jupiter came together in Libra, it wasn't the same because it wasn't at the 0 degree mark, but I natally have Saturn in Libra and my Jupiter is in Scorpio, but it would have happened between 1980 and 81, I think, when there's a select few group of people who have Saturn and Jupiter in Libra conjunct in their natal charts. And that energy is really beautiful because Saturn is all about long-term thinking, long-term, building down of roots, stability, building structure in life. And Jupiter is a planet of expansion. It's the planet of let's grow here. And with these two contradictory energies, it's such a beautiful energy for 20 years because it's like Jupiter wants to expand and wants to grow and wants to get opportunities and get after it. But then Saturn is there being like, okay, but what's realistic? What is going to sustain the test of time? So again, whatever area of Aquarius you have is going to indicate to you where this is happening. Other energies that I want to talk about too is like Aquarian energy is, I keep saying energy, sorry. I just really want you to tune in to what it feels like, Aquarian energy. And this is why I love astrology, because it pairs so well with the energy work that I do. I find it very significant that through different transits, you can feel the shift. At least for me, attuning myself to energies and the different flow, you can feel it. And anytime I'm starting to channel the energies, it affects the way I dress too, because I feel like, so I'm wearing tie-dye for those of you who are listening on the podcast. And I just always feel this Aquarian energy coming out more and more during the moons in Aquarius too, because again, I have my moon and Venus in Aquarius, and I just feel like my freak flag starting to fly. Like I want to be a little different. I want to express myself in a different way. But anyway, Aquarian energy is all about authenticity. It's all about your truth, your authentic truth. And with the sun opposite in Leo, Leo is in its domicile in the sun. The sun is ruled by Leo. So the sun is very strong, and Leo energy rules the heart space. And the higher forms of Leo energy is somebody who is very much in their heart space, moves through with their heart. It's a very royal symbol, right? When I think of Leo energy, it's somebody of royalty, somebody who shines, somebody who's like in the spotlight. And however, there is always a shadow side to every sign, every energy. The lower vibrations of Leo is somebody who is ego driven, somebody who's narcissistic, somebody who only takes into consideration his or her or their needs. But this can be balanced with the opposite sign of Aquarius, which takes into consideration other people, the collective, for the good of all involved, and also leaning into authenticity and what is true to the person, but also, yeah, just like moving aside and listening to other people's needs. They say, I've heard astrologers say that Aquarian energy is the higher octave of Gemini, because Gemini is very much a social butterfly, very communicative, very curious. But Aquarius is the higher octave, meaning it has a more expanded, more higher dimensional understanding of how this universe works. I feel like if Gemini was like in the 3D, like talking to people, Aquarius is like the 5D, being able to tap into the angelic realms, being able to connect to your higher self even. And I feel another significant thing to consider during this full moon, and I've been seeing it collectively with my friends and just noticing certain patterns within the collective, and just feeling the energy of anxiety as well, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is energy, and also Capricorn. I mean, sorry, why do I keep saying Capricorn? Saturn, which rules our skeletal system, our structures, and our bones. So it's really important when we have these Aquarian transits to do some kind of breath work, grounding work. Make sure that you take care of your nervous system so that it's not on overload. And I just feel a lot of anxious energy in the air in general. And also when I've been driving, people have been driving very crazy. And, you know, Aquarius, with the cars being technology, people are just taking out their frustrations and their anxiety out on their vehicle and out on other people. And hey, I am taking my own advice, because sometimes it's either easier said than done. The simplest things in life, like going for a walk in nature, doing breath work, doing yoga, doing some kind of mindfulness practice, always sounds so easy when you say it, but to take that time of stillness for yourself, I don't know why, it's just like you'd rather just almost just go about your day and you don't realize how good you feel afterwards. But it's so important during these transits to sit in stillness, connect to your higher self, connect to that greater, higher power that is not of your own, to ask for guidance and do some breath work to calm your nervous system down. You want to be in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming system. If you are too stressed out, you're in the fight or flight, which is in the sympathetic nervous system. And it's like your adrenals will go crazy, cortisol levels go crazy, your body starts pumping out hormones, and then you're just an overload. And again, Aquarius and Uranus, Uranus being the modern ruler of Aquarius, rules technology. So to the best of your ability, I know this is also easier said than done, just shut off your computer, shut off your devices. I've been doing this a lot more recently. I've been just putting my phone on airplane mode, leaving it at my house and going for walks in nature. And it's just been so beneficial for my mental health, not constantly seeing like what is going on wrong with this world, all the floods and all the shit happening with Mother Earth and all the fighting going on, all the just crazy shit that's happening in our world, but we're being bombarded by all the stimulus that our nervous systems can't handle it anymore. And I really believe that it's not only what you consume with food or with what you drink, but also energetically, like what are you consuming? What are you watching? Because our minds, our brains literally cannot know the difference between what is real and what is fake. That is why subconscious programming is so critical and it's so important, because you really have to be careful of the stimuli and the messaging that you're exposing yourself to, because if you constantly look at things that are telling you that this world is going to shit and that we're all going to die and that this earth is going to die, you're really going to believe that, because that is what you're processing in your subconscious mind. And your mind, your subconscious mind, literally creates your reality. 95% of your thoughts are dictated by your subconscious mind. Only 5% of your conscious mind is doing the thinking in your day-to-day basis. So just be very wary of that during this Aquarian full moon this week, because listen, I believe 100% that astrology and any kind of system is meant to help us. It's not to create fear. It's not to create fear mongering, but it's just important for us to understand what's coming up, like the energies. Like I think of it as weather. You wouldn't go out during a hurricane, right? You wouldn't even go out during a thunderstorm. You would try to avoid that shit, or you would at least take an umbrella, right? That's how I see astrology. So whatever I say, it's not to create fear, it's not to scare anybody, it's just to prepare. And I really do believe that tense transits like oppositions and squares and the one that I'm about to tell you is meant for us. It's not against us. It's meant for us to be on our highest timeline. And in order for us to do that, we have to look at our shadows and we have to go through some of the crap that's holding us back. So the reason why I said in the beginning that I feel like this full moon is a little icky is because the moon is between a rock and a hard place. It's between Pluto retrograde in Capricorn and Saturn in retrograde in Aquarius. What did I say about Saturn? It rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. It's not an exact conjunction because Pluto is at 25 degrees and Saturn, I believe, is at 11 degrees. But it is, the moon is falling between those two planets. Now, Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth, of transformation. I call it a very regenerative planet. It really shows you what you need to see, the shadows, but it ultimately shows your inner power. But it's not an easy planet. If you're having a Pluto transit right now, that's pretty rough. It's rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, right? And then Saturn also is a very ancient astrologers call it a malefic planet, but I don't like to call planets good or bad. I just think that they show us lessons and give us opportunities in different ways. And Saturn retrograde is also asking us, it's inviting us to see certain structures, certain ways in which we've been living in a different way, right? Aquarius. So these two planets on our moon, the moon is our physical body, it's our subconscious, it's our psyche, it's our emotional body. It's going to put pressure on us to be so truthful about how we feel. And a full moon, everyone thinks of it just as this manifestation time, and it can be, but it is a transit of purging, it's a transit of releasing, it's a transit of seeing something very, very, very clearly. You know, the luminaries, the sun opposite the moon, and in astrology, oppositions are tense aspects. They're meant to show us something. So you might see things, you might hear things, you might learn something that you might not like. You might hear news, you might see something, you might learn something about yourself, even that you're like, oh, fuck, now I'm really going to have to address this, because in a certain extent, ignorance is bliss. And I think that's why a lot of people don't do the inner work. A lot of people don't want to, quote unquote, wake up, because once you know, once you expand your consciousness, it's a conscious decision then not to know what you already know. So when you find something out, new piece of information, something, a revelation, if you will, an aha moment, which is like a very Aquarian thing, a very Uranus thing, then you can't not know it. So then the question is, like, what do you do with that information now? And this transit is asking us to be so true to ourselves, our authentic truth. Our full moon, the two full moons in Aquarius are asking us to be totally authentic to our heart. What do we want? Have you ever asked yourself that? What do you want? What does your heart desire? Have you ever even let your heart feel those things? Have you ever even asked yourself those things, right? Because the sun is opposite in Leo. Have you ever thought about your dreams and like what that entails? And it might entail being revolutionary, rebellious, because Aquarius is the rebellious, revolutionary energy. Uranus is like, fuck no, I'm breaking free. I have Uranus on my ascendant, so I feel this energy very strongly. And this is the time, that's the thing, like 2021 is the 5-year. Please listen to my episode with Remington Donovan about the 5-year, the numerology of this year. It's all about being rebellious. It's all about breaking free. It's all about doing shit that is not at all what you've used to do. It's something different, but it's something that's in alignment with your highest timeline. In July, so June was a month of change, of deciding, and July, I believe, is about leaving the past behind and finally taking those baby steps towards your future. And if you're listening to this, and if you've made it this far, you know how I roll. Like, I really believe each of us have the capacity to live our dream lives. Each of us has the capacity to co-create our reality with spirit. So, you know, I recognize that there are still a lot of oppressive systems in place, and not all of us have the same levels of privilege. But this is why, again, the moon rules people. Aquarius is the collective. As a collective, when we all highlight and amplify each other, help people who have been marginalized, give opportunity to people who might have not gotten the chance to speak out, or the voice, or the platform. That is why we're each helping each other and amplifying. That's why I created Awaken and Align. This is where we as the people, you know, the Constitution of the United States, we the people, we are going to create the change that we want, that represents us fully, to represent the collective in a way that it has not been done before. And I've said this in a couple of other videos, that the United States, and I can only speak for the United States because that's where I'm from and that's where I live, and the majority of our listeners are from the United States, but America is going to go through its Pluto return in Capricorn in the next few years. And again, Pluto is death and rebirth and transformation. And I really feel like the way in which this country was founded is going to be very revolutionary, is not going to be the way that it used to be. And the United States is a Sagittarius rising with a moon in Aquarius, like me. Except the United States has its sun in Cancer in the 8th house. So a little different than me, but the United States has its moon in Aquarius. So I really feel that the people, the collective, is ultimately going to change the course of this country to be more reflective of the people who live in it. Woo, that was a mouthful. One last thing that I want to say is that a lot of you, including myself, if you're listening to this and you resonate with this, a lot of us have maybe battled with imposter syndrome. You know, I used to work in private equity, which is a very Capricornian thing. And then during my nodal return, I have my south node in Capricorn. When Pluto transited my south node, it was like, bye job. And I just decided to completely change my life. And I started getting into healing and astrology and talking about these more spiritual topics. I definitely battled with imposter syndrome. I've talked about this a lot. And I feel like maybe a lot of you have too. What I realized during understanding my Aquarian energy, my moon and Venus in Aquarius, and also because Saturn rules karma, Saturn rules to a certain extent like past lives, I would say. And I really believe that we've all had many past lives where we were burned at the stake, that we weren't able to talk about these things, that we weren't able to share our knowledge and wisdom with people to help people with their ultimate liberation and freedom, right? We the people again. But I just want to remind all of you that we have lived many, many, many lifetimes, possibly even on different planets, different star systems, and we've incarnated in different ways where we've gained many, many, many different soul incarnations to have the wisdom that we have now. And that is why spiritual practice, a mindfulness practice to connect to that part of yourself, your third eye, your intuition, your soul that literally is so freaking amazing, so fucking badass that your soul can move through time and space, that it is independent and dependent on your physical body. Our physical skin suits are just the skin suits that help us hold our spirits, our souls, our infinite potentiality, right? That even though you might have been burned at the stake, maybe you were persecuted, or like me, one of these shamans said that I was poisoned in one of my past lives, but we remember these things, right? In this lifetime, in this incarnation, through our fears of speaking, of showing up, of shining, like that Leo energy. And we are like, what the heck are these fears? What the heck are these limiting beliefs? Why can't I do the damn thing? And I really believe a lot of it has to do with our past incarnations for not being able to share some of the ideas that truly made our souls be set on fire. And so that is why I also believe in the power of soul retrievals, past life regressions, Akashic records readings, to remember those things, because it can be so healing and validating of why in this incarnation you might be having some troubles communicating, or maybe a blocked throat chakra. But just remember that you have an infinite wisdom. And no matter how many times you were killed, no matter how many times you were burnt at the stake, or called a witch, or called a shaman, or whatever it was in your past life, that they cannot burn our souls, which are infinite. Because we're going to keep coming back. I'm sorry, not sorry. No matter how many times we were persecuted for our wisdom and for helping the collective, for being the light workers and healers and change makers and dreamers that we were meant to be, they cannot kill our souls. That's the most beautiful, magical thing. And the wisdom that we hold within our soul, it just keeps getting passed down through all these lifetimes. And that is why also Saturn, being the planet of karma, and understanding the laws of the universe. I also did a separate video and podcast episode about the 12 universal laws, that it's so important to understand these laws, because whatever which you do, you get back. Whatever you give, you receive. So it's so important for you, as a healer, as a change maker, as a light worker, as a dreamer, as whatever wisdom keeper that you are bringing into this collective today, that you do that with the intention of the greatest good of all involved, for the greatest good of all involved, as well as for yourself. And that is the Aquarian energy. That is the kind of high vibrational Aquarian energy that we are moving into. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I just wish all of you a beautiful full moon. If you are interested in going deeper and doing magic spells and being really witchy and having a beautiful community to share it with, please feel free to join our weekly moon circles. There's 3 different tiers. The first tier is the magician tier, and it's once a month. You get the full moon. The second tier is twice a month. You get access to, it's the high priestess tier. You get access to the full and new moon of every month. And lastly, the third tier, which is the empress tier. It's weekly circles, including the full moon, the new moon, and the other two circles in between is either a workshop led by one of my friends, somebody from my podcast. The last circle was led by my friend Xenia, and she taught us how to read our human design chart. Last week, I did a love spell during the Mars and Venus conjunction in Leo. So there's different things that are happening in between the moon cycles, which are super exciting. So if that is of interest to you, feel free to head to the link in the show notes or the description box if you're watching on YouTube, and we would love to have you. So have a beautiful full moon in Aquarius, and I send you nothing but love, health, wealth, and abundance.